following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am indeed comfortably zoned in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. As advertised, I talk to the most interesting people on the planet, one of whom is a regular on Comfortably Zoned, and he's my bud, Mr. Jerry Feitelberg. Welcome back to the Zone.
Thrilled to be back. Pleased to let the public know that Ralph and I live in the best town in the Bay Area.
There is no question. The best town in the country.
It's got the
weather-wise,
best weather.
Literally the best weather, 365 days averaged out, that you could want, really. No humidity, and for not just the weather, but right, when I say right across the bay, 20-minute bus ride, and that's in traffic 20 minutes. You're at downtown San Francisco. And
it depends what part of town you live in. If you live out in Bayfront, you can get downtown on the ferry in 20 minutes, on the Harbor Bay Ferry. It's a great ride.
Absolutely.
No stress.
That's a boat
no
for all of you who are out there worried about San Francisco. It is a great place to live, and we're blessed. How did you discover Alameda?
Well, going back, you got to go back almost 40 years now. I had a business. I was a minority partner in a pharmacy down in Santa Monica, California, and I lived in the San Fernando Valley. I lived in Woodland Hills, which was quite a drive to get to work, at least an hour each way, and and that was, with who knows, I don't remember, but my business partner was cooking the books, and he got caught. So we dissolved the partnership, and I had met a couple of years earlier. I had met at a convention in San Diego. I met these folks from San Francisco, and this one fellow was a fellow pharmacist, and we became fast friends. And he said, "Well, if you ever decide to move up here, my brother, who is an attorney, can help you get the financing for your business." So I said, "Gee, that sounds good." And the partnership dissolved, and then I came up here looking for a business, and we found the store in Alameda, and the rest is history. I moved up here.
Did you buy it from another? It had been an existing pharmacist.
It had been
pharmacy.
Yeah, it was Alameda Drug. Was started in 1927. And when I had it, the Guy's Drug Chain, which was a local chain in the Oakland and Alameda area, had owned it, and they wanted to sell it. I guess the owners were ill. I don't remember the exact reason, but I think the owners had passed away or were ill, and they sold the business to me.
Okay, now I'll ask you a question. What did you find was the biggest difference between living in L.A., Southern California, and living in Northern California? Well,
first of all, living in the Bay Area, San Francisco, the city of San Francisco has a defined area. It's 7 by 7. It's 49 square miles. There's a downtown. There's a theater district. There's a lot of similarities between there and where I grew up in Boston, and small city growing up. In LA, everything is spread out, and you don't measure distance by miles. You measure by time, how long it takes you to get there. Oh, it's 30 miles south on the freeway, or 30 minutes south on the freeway. So that's 30 miles at freeway speed. And now, of course, with the congestion down there, I remember it took us an hour and a half or 2 hours to go 18 miles to go from West LA down to Redondo Beach a couple of years ago when we were visiting. My lovely lady Isla had a cousin that lived down there, and we took a trip down. And you head past, you go down the south on the 405, there's 6 lanes of traffic on each side, and it's not moving. It's the world's biggest parking lot. And the Bay Area, when we moved here, the traffic was not as bad as it is now. But we could drive into downtown San Francisco from Alameda in 15 minutes. It takes a little bit longer now, but still you have BART, you have public transportation on the peninsula, Caltrain. You have ways of getting around without a car, but you absolutely must positively have a car in the city of Los Angeles or the Los Angeles area. It's just so spread out.
Unless you're really right downtown in L.A. And downtown L.A. is really fairly small for a city that size, but they have the courts down there. My older daughter worked down there in the court for a number of years, and she lived in West L.A., which is about 10 or 12 miles from downtown. And it wasn't too bad for her going to work. And, of course, they built the metro. It makes it a lot easier now for some people to get around. They're starting to get the message you need public transportation down there. You can't live in your car. There's just too many cars on the road. But, right.
As I said, everything's spread out. You can live in Woodland Hills like I did, and people will be working way past the airport. They have a 40 or 50-mile commute every day. It's not uncommon. And here, things seemed a lot smaller. Although the Bay Area is, look at 6 or 7 million people. It's one of the largest Bay Area communities in the country.
Oh, no, it's not just San Francisco. It's Oakland, Contra Costa, Alameda County.
You got the whole San Jose's got 1 million people living in San Jose, plus all the business that the tech industry has, all the jobs that the tech industry has provided in cities like Mountain View and Cupertino and Palo Alto, the NASA's, the Ames research over at Moffett Field, all those jobs. The whole area is just bursting with high tech. Facebook, Google, Amazon to a degree, Microsoft, Apple, all these companies are employing people. Advanced Micro Devices, I could go on and on. Hewlett Packard.
The elephant in the room is the cost of living in the Bay Area.
Yes, that's a very, very, very serious problem. The housing situation is unbelievable. My younger daughter is working for a tech company in San Francisco, and they're all making 6-figure salaries, but a lot of them can't afford to rent an apartment in San Francisco. A 1-bedroom apartment in the city goes for $3,600, $4,000. Same thing on the peninsula. While there is rent control in the city, the owners can bring it up to market value when the tenant either moves away or dies, or there's a change in that.
Or is improperly
status.
Evicted, which is something
right.
that renters have been fighting a long time. Landlords have done things to bring that rent up that very questionable.
Yeah, there are questionable practices. There are, and the same thing. I'll give you an example. In the city of Menlo Park, there's a lot of property right adjacent to the Caltrain. The trains go by all day long. There was a nursery, where they grew plants and that type of thing, right next to the train tracks. And the nursery closed and went out of business, and it sat vacant for a couple of years. Somebody decided to build townhomes. They're 3-level townhomes, and they're good size. They're about 2,000 square feet. Take a guess what the starting price is.
I wouldn't even begin to.
They're starting at $2 million each, and they're right next to the train tracks. $2 million bucks. for a 2,000 square foot townhouse. It's
Hey, listen, I think I've been able to translate what your dog is saying. I think Timmy is in the well.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay. I don't know if you remember that show growing up. Lassie.
Which one was that? Oh,
that was Lassie.
Yeah. Well, Gidget's got the same. She's tan with white trim, sort of like a collie, but she's a rescue dog. She's got a little bit.
All right. Hey, let's talk a little baseball, and let's talk a little A's baseball. This is our adopted team in the Bay Area, so to speak. Yep. What's the situation with the stadium? I think they're closer than ever before.
And they're closer than ever before. They've gotten some support from the legislature. They're doing an environmental impact report. I think the Port of Oakland is signed on. I think they will either lease or sell them the property. The issues that they were concerned with the pilots coming in or turning the big freighters around in the estuary because of the lights, but they've addressed all those issues. But it's still not 100% done. And we've discussed this before. I'll believe it when I see it. As soon as they start.
Right, when the shovel is in the ground, I'll celebrate.
We'll believe it. Yep. Yeah. So it's coming, but it's not there yet. So
is there any major resistance? Anybody or anything standing in the way?
Nope, I don't think so. I think all those hurdles have been jumped, and I think they're just a matter of getting everything signed on the dotted line. It's not that far away.
Wow.
So let's be optimistic.
That would really be nice.
It would be nice. But they better have a team that will do well to draw the people to the ballpark. The ballpark might be a curiosity for a year or two, but if the team is not winning, no one's going to show up. I give you Exhibit A.
People will show up in the first few years and hopefully fuel the fire in terms of if they could take that money and use it wisely. Giants.
I give you Exhibit A, the Miami Marlins Stadium in Florida. The Miami Marlins Stadium is not more than 7 or 8 years old. And guess who has the worst attendance in Major League Baseball? The Miami Marlins. And you know why? They traded away or sold all of their good players.
Because Tampa's doing something right, or they would have the worst attendance.
Tampa is desperate for a decent stadium. The place that they play in is a total dump.
Well, it's not so much that it's that it's indoors, and there's no option to open it up. And I think that whereas if you could build a stadium that can be domed and opened, weather permitting, you get a big heads up.
Yeah, it's I think Seattle has one that does it. I think Houston has a roof that opens and closes. You know how humid it gets in Houston. They probably have rain showers, so that roof is open and closed quite a bit. So that works. And I think that I don't think the A's is going to have a roof. They don't need it because it doesn't rain that much here. How many rainouts have been here since you've been here? Maybe one every 10 years, something.
Very few.
Yeah, this year was a little bit different. We had a little bit more rain this year, but basically we don't have from April until October we don't have any rain.
Okay. You are what I call like Mr. Michael Duca. You're a ballpark rat, and I think that's the highest compliment I can pay a person.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of what you're doing presently. I know, as we've talked about, you were the pharmacist for the A's back in the 90s.
Yeah, back in the 90s. And it came to me out of the blue. Back in the 90s, when I had my store at the corner park in Santa Clara in Alameda, we had some restaurants across the street. And the trainer for the A's, Barry Weinberg, came into my store one day and said, "How would you like to work with the A's?" My answer was, "How soon and what do I got to do?" He said, "Well, we have a list of about 65 medicines that we use. We keep a kit that we take on the road, and we have it at the stadium. And I'll send you the list, and tell me what you charge for them." So he did, and this was in 1991, and I did, and I didn't hear from them, and I figured I'll never hear from them again. Well, just before the '93 season started, I got a call, and they said, "We'd like you to come on board." And the first time I went over to the ballpark, I was like a kid in a candy store. They had my name on a credential, and I had total access to everywhere in the park. I could go there. I sit in the training room. I could talk to the players when they're getting work done. I remember a couple incidents. I think it was in '93. Ricky Henderson was still with the club, and we were talking, and I was telling Ricky that if I were a general manager of a club and I were building a club, he would be the guy that I built the team around. And of course, he agreed with me. So,
hey, the dogs are really coming through sound-wise. Is there a way you can separate yourself from that?
I can't let them out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and go in the office and see if that will work. I got them sequestered. I thought I had them sequestered in the kitchen, but they found an opening.
I think maybe they thought they had you requested.
No. The guard.
Sometimes the dog is the leader of the pack with people.
No, the gardener. Every time he moves around, they're barking at him.
All right.
So this is a little better. I'm in
better.
Closed room. I'm in a closed room now. Yeah.
Sequester, now requester.
Yeah. Then 1 year. Yeah. Then So I had run of the place. I got to meet guys like Eckersley and McGuire and Giambi and Matt Stairs and Geronimo Baroa. And it was a great time. It was great for me because I was a fan of the game, and
right.
I had all the perks.
You were literally 6 minutes away from the stadium from your pharmacy downtown Alameda. 6 minutes.
It was great. It was great. Just hop on the freeway, one exit over, whoop, you're there. And and of course, I got the real perk I had is I got to park in the players' parking lot. That was neat. So
nice.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they have chow available. They have it's kind of the best job going.
Yeah, well, I never availed myself. They would have a spread after dinner, and that was for the players after the game, and that was for them. That was their time, and I would go home and have dinner. It was not. I didn't want to impose on them. Let them have their time. But if you needed a Coke or a coffee, that was available for you. That was
so
no
give me
problem.
a little insight. What is something about Ricky Henderson, Hall of Famer? Could be one of the top, greatest base stealer of all time, and was a catalyst out there. He could change a game. He could take a game, and much like Willie could do, and few others. He was really terrific. What is it about him that we don't know about? Good, bad, or indifferent?
No, he was a fabulous player. He kept himself in tremendous shape. His build. He was only, I think, he was about 5'10". He wasn't that tall, but his body was sculpted. He really was built, and he took good care of himself. He didn't abuse drugs. He didn't do booze, and if he could still play, he would. He'd be in that greatest shape. And what was great about Ricky, and you hit the nail on the head, he was a disruptor. He could lead off. He holds the record for most home runs leading off. I think he had in his career he had over 80 solo home runs leading off. And then if he got a walk, he'd steal second, steal third, and then score on a fly ball. And we won nothing. And he would just disrupt the pitcher's rhythm. And because you didn't know when he was going to go, and he was a master at it, and he worked at it, and he worked hard. Whatever he did, he worked hard, and he saved his money. You're not going to hear that he's having financial difficulties. I think he lives down the peninsula. I think he lives in Hillsborough. He has a beautiful home, and he made something out of himself. He's a kid that came out of Oakland, and he became a Hall of Famer. So you got to give him his family, his mother, and whoever brought him up, give him credit for bringing him up the right way.
Nice. Did you get to meet Reggie Jackson at all?
No, I didn't get to meet Reggie. He was with the Yankees. He was working as an advisor for the Yankees. I saw him a couple times. I was over at Scott's in Jack London Square for dinner one night, and he was there with some people. And then one day I was driving over to the Coliseum, and I was on High Street just before the freeway on-ramp, and he was in the next car next to me. He had a convertible with the top down. Recognized him right away. Kind of neat.
Yeah. Big car guy.
He loves his cars.
Loves his cars.
Yeah, he had that fire. Yeah.
Yes, he did. It's hard to start a flood. But
how do you start a flood, right?
How do you? Okay. Reggie Jackson could have had one of the greatest days of all time in World Series history with the Yankees. Hit those 3 home runs against the Dodgers.
He did. And I believe he victimized Bob Welsh, I think, who later pitched for the A's. Right.
And, I say that this was the day, I don't even remember the year, I think it was 1966, when Reggie was drafted and signed. Second round, the Mets had the first pick, and they chose Steve Chilcott. Catcher, never made it to the big leagues, where Reggie, on the other hand, falls right into the A's hands and becomes a Hall of Famer and was a real catalyst in that the little dynasty they had going in the 70s.
Yep.
5 in a row, 3 World Series in the middle of it, 5 division champions in a row. He was terrific.
But people forget that he missed the 1972 World Series because of an injury. He missed it. He didn't play in it. Yeah. But
he came out to be introduced on crutches, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
In street clothes.
Yeah, he went. He was here during the turbulent days with Charlie Finley and the beginning of free agency. And after the 75 season, they had won the 3 World Series. In 1976, the players like Joe Rudy and Raleigh Fingers and Vida Blue were all going to be free agents. Of course, and then the Finley traded.
He screwed up with Catfish, and
he lost
tender
Catfish
him.
to the.
Didn't pay his annuity.
Yeah.
Catfish became a free agent, and he tried to trade. As a matter of fact, they spent 3 days with the Red Sox.
Yeah, it was
Rollie
Rudy
Fingers and Joe Rudy in a Red Sox uniform. They never played in a game, but I have in my mind's eye a memory they were on television on a Friday night in Boston, and their contracts hadn't been approved, and they were to be the whole thing was reversed, and they never got into games.
Willie Coon voided the deals.
Right.
You know, so, but I think Reggie went to Baltimore.
Yes, he did.
I think he played 2 years in Baltimore.
He was traded for Don Baylor, even up.
Oh, for Don Baylor. He got traded. Okay, and he was there, and he was in New York in 77 and 78 because he was in the World Series in those 2 years. So his stay in Baltimore was short. It was not a long stay in Baltimore.
It was 1 year.
Yeah, and then he went to the Angels and near the end of his career, and he finished up with the A's.
Yes, that was a nice homecoming. It is nice when guys do finish up with their teams.
I remember when in '97. The A's traded, I think it was John Wasden, to the Red Sox for Jose Canseco. And remember when Jose was traded at the end of in September of 1992. I mean, it was a stunning trade.
Pulled off the field. I think Billy Martin pulled him out of the on-deck circle. Was that him?
No. LaRussa was the manager.
Was that Sierra?
Ruben Sierra came in the trade. He came along with Bobby Witt and Jeff Russell for Canseco. They came from Texas, and I mean it was just absolutely stunning. Canseco had been the golden boy, but you know he got into some jams with the law, speeding. He had a couple of guns in his car. He was fighting with his wife Esther, whom he later divorced. You know, so he was making a lot of headlines, and they weren't very favorable. And of course, I remember back in 1988 when the A's were playing in Boston, they were doing the roids. They were yelling steroids at that time at Canseco, and he was doing them in 1988.
He admitted to doing them. Everything he said in any of his books about steroids, about who was using, and the predominance of it in the game, no lies. He was absolutely truthful about everything. If you ever read Canseco's books,
I read both of them.
Yeah. They will give you an idea, folks, about what went on and goes on in this beloved game. And as a matter of fact, I'm doing a kind of a this date in Gents history and the A's. I do one on the A's and on the Mets and one on the Yankees. And yesterday was the birthday of a person who you wouldn't think of as a steroid user, but you can't discuss steroids without bringing up his name. Do you remember a center fielder with the Mets, with the Giants, who was like 5'6", and just a tiny little guy?
No, give me a hint. Can't remember.
Doing steroids. It's kind of funny because I posted this show yesterday, and I had to have a brain cramp of who he is. So I'm walking over to the computer as we speak to see the post.
Well, I can.
The
while you're doing
the computer's down. Look at this.
I can tell you that the Giants had a couple players that were doing or allegedly doing steroids. and it didn't help them.
Well,
Marvin
this
Bernard,
kid, he was in the Mitchell Report, and it got people talking about. This is when Sosa and McGuire were going, and Bonds was doing steroids, and the Bash brother. All these guys were doing it, right? And this kid, I can't think of his name. It's really symptomatic of growing old and.
Don't worry about it. You're thinking of Marvin Bernard?
Marvin Bernard was the man. And,
there you go.
No,
didn't help him one bit.
No, it didn't. It didn't. And I might have posted that show wrong and used somebody else's name. But the point is that players were using not just to bulk up. They were using for recovery.
Right.
They were using... and no question, it makes one's body recover quickly. They were using to intensify their concentration. They say, which does something, but they were using it primarily to come back from injuries. And it made people think that it gave people an idea about why it was predicted that 80% of the players back in the day were using steroids, and they weren't all bulking up.
No.
So
I'm gonna give you another reason or something that I saw over the years. You know that baseball is 162 games. And it's played every day for 6 months. Well, there's a few off days, but very few. And a lot of guys who are pitchers, now they're okay. But now when the season gets into July, you're out there playing in heat and humidity. You're getting beat up. By the time August rolls around, a lot of these guys can't lift their arms up above their shoulder. They can't even comb their hair because they're so tired. They put a lot of strain on those arms every day. And now the guys, of course, over the years, you go back in the 40s and 50s and 60s when we were watching, the pitchers went, 7, 8, 9 innings. They wanted to pitch all the games. And then the relievers, they didn't have a 6th inning guy, 7th inning guy, 8th inning guy, that type of thing. Now some of these guys go out there every day and pitch, and when you get into 2/3 of the season, and they can't lift their arm because they're so damn tired, they'll do anything to keep fresh. And if that means taking a steroid or human growth hormone or an injection, they'll do it to get through the season. It's their livelihood, and they know. The other thing that they know is we don't want to say that's the Wally Pipp syndrome. Remember when Wally Pipp was taken out of the game and replaced by Lou Gehrig? He never got back in the game. Gehrig played 2,130 games before sitting down. So the players know that there are 10 guys behind them, all wanting their jobs, and they will do anything or whatever it takes to stay in the game, and that's why they use the steroids. Sometimes
the player I was thinking of was Max Venable.
Oh, Max Venable, sure, he was around for a long time. He had played for the Giants,
and I think he was in the Mitchell Report.
Could be. It wouldn't surprise me. The Giants had another catcher, Bobby Estalella, who was doing roids. Didn't help him hit more than 220. So
right. And if you're old enough to remember, Bobby Estalaya's grandfather played in the big leagues. And
that's
was
a good
featured
question.
in that song, Van Lingo Mungo.
Oh, really? You got good knowledge, but I don't know who it is.
Estella, Van Lingo Mungo. Hey, Jerry, love chatting with you.
Great. I had a great conversation. Got to do it again.
All right. We'll talk again soon, my friend. And we're on the 18th Nations on Webster Street. You and I for lunch. All right, my friend. Thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Jerry Feitelberg. Adios, my friend. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.